"How is that?" Elon answered. "3 times a day the king will play from the castle wall when the sun rises, when the sun peaks, and when the sun sets. Listen for him. Follow his song, and you will find the castle." There is only one other flute like this one. Only one. And you and your father play the same music? Yes. It was Cassidan inquiring this time. Cassidan was known for his alertness. He saw what others missed. He knew the home of the traveler by the dirt on his boot. He knew the truth of a story by the eyes of a teller. He could tell the size of a marching army by the number of scattered birds in flight. Carlyle and Elon wondered why he'd asked about the flute. It wouldn't be very long before they all found out. "Consider the danger and choose your companion carefully," the prince cautioned, and so they did. The next morning the 3 knights mounted their horses and entered Hemlock. Behind each rose the chosen companion. The knock at the door startled Landon as he looked up from the book to see his cousin in the doorway. "Everybody's going to bed," he whispered. "I'll be back in a few minutes." And then, loud enough for everyone to hear, he said, "Night, Landon. See you in the morning." Landon groaned. "These knights aren't the only travelers in a dangerous forest," he muttered to himself as he turned his attention back to the book. For the people in the king's castle, the days of waiting passed slowly. All knew of the test. All wondered which knight would win the princess. 3 times a day the king sent the music soaring into the trees of the hemlock. And 3 times a day the people stopped their work and listened. After many days and countless songs, a watchman spotted 2 figures stumbling out of the forest into the clearing. No one could tell who they were. They were too far from the castle. The men had no horses, no weapons, and no armor. "Hurry," commanded the king to his guards. "Bring them in. Give them medical treatment and food, but don't tell anyone who they are. Dress the knight as a prince, and we will see their faces tonight at the banquet." He then dismissed the crowds and told them to prepare for the feast. That evening a festive spirit filled the banquet hall. On every table the people tried to guess which knight had survived that hemlock forest. Finally the moment came to present the victor. At the king's signal the people became quiet, and he began to play the flute. Once again the ivory instrument sang. The people turned to see who would enter. Many thought it would be Carlyle, the strongest. Others felt it would be Elon, the swiftest. But it was neither. The knight who survived the journey was Cassidan, the wisest. He strode quickly across the floor, following the sound of the flute one final time and bowing before the king. "Tell us of your journey," he was instructed. The people leaned forward to listen. "The Hope Knots were treacherous," Cassidan began. "They attacked, but we resisted. They took our horses, but we continued. They nearly destroyed us. Though it was something far worse." "What was that?" asked the princess. They imitated, the king said. "Yes, my king. They imitated each time the song of your flute would enter the forest. 100 flutes would begin to play. All around us, all we heard was music, songs from every direction. I don't know what became of Carlyle or Elon," he continued, "but I know the strength and speed will not help one hear the right flute." The king asked the question that was on everyone's lips. "Then how did you hear my song?" "I chose the right companion," he answered as he motioned for his fellow traveler to enter. The people gasped. It was the prince. In his hand he carried the flute. "I knew there was only one who could play the song as you do," Cassidan explained, "so I asked him to travel with me. As we journeyed and he played, I learned your song so well that though 1,000 other false flutes tried to hide your music, I could still hear you. I knew your song, and I followed it." As Landon closed the book, a note fell out. He picked it up. "Follow the song of the king, Landon. Love, Josh." "Yep," Josh said, "that's exactly what I'll do," and he resolved, "That's exactly what I will do tonight." Minutes later his cousin's face appeared. peeked through the crack of the door. Come on, Landon, let's get out of here. I've decided not to go. What? Come on, don't be a nerd. Let's go have fun. No thanks, Landon's voice was steady. I'm staying home. And then he said with a smile, I got some music to listen to. You know, I hope that this has been helpful to you. This story time. Let me know if it's something you'd be interested in me doing on an ongoing basis. Let me see how much time I have left. Oh, good. The Christian life can be likened to walking up an incline. Jesus called it a narrow road. Along the way are many opportunities or temptations to stop, or at least to become distracted. Can we all be very distracted? Our potent enemy, Satan, has littered our path with every stupid, pleasurable, deadly thing at his disposal. Too often we fall for the apple that he offers, just like he offered Eve, and she fell for it. We think it's just kid stuff or exploring what's out there. But he found out it's much better to avoid getting ensnared than to try to get out of the trap. Many of us as adults have learned the same hard lesson. It is easier to avoid being ensnared than trying to get out of the snare. Here's a secret that might help. It's called discernment. If we could quickly recognize sin for what it is and not be fooled by the packaging, we could resist it every time. If you knew that the beautiful candy-coated apple was really poison, you wouldn't think of biting into it. I've discovered an encouraging truth. The lure of something gets weaker the longer we resist it. Sure, at first it seems overwhelming, as if there's no way to refuse it. But the perception is only an illusion. Temptation is going to come to you through enticing pictures in a magazine or through a friend. It may not look like poison, but it is. Everything inside of you will scream, go ahead, take a small bite. I deserve it. Don't. The secret is staying on the road. The secret is staying on the road, making the decision to resist long before the offer comes. Let me reiterate that. The secret to staying on the straight path is making the decision long before the offer comes that you're not taking it. Be controlled and be alert. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. Resist him, standing firm in the faith, because you know that your brothers throughout the world are undergoing the same kinds of sufferings. That's 1 Peter 5, 8 through 9. Look that up. Write that down and look that up. Submit yourselves then to God. Resist the devil and he will flee from you. That's James 4:7. James 4:7 is something you ought to look up and write that down. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes, for our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Therefore, put on the full armor of God so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to take your stand and stand. Stand your ground. That's Ephesians 6:11 through 13. Hey, write that down. Write Ephesians 6:11, 13. Write that down and go read that. Y'all, these are scriptures that I'm giving to you for a reason today. I myself have come under these kind of temptations for those things that that seem enticing. Certainly in my beauty channel, because there's a lot of things about makeup and hair and skincare. There's a lot of things about handbags and clothing and shoes and jewelry that are quite enticing. But you know what they can do to us? They can, first of all, give us a continual lust for more, and there's never enough. We're never satisfied. And I have fallen into that trap. And, I think we can still enjoy beautiful things, but let's maybe look at what are the beautiful things we're enjoying. I'm not saying we can't put our makeup on together, and I'm not saying you can't enjoy a really good handbag. I'm not saying you don't need clothing and shoes, and it's nice to accessorize with a few pieces of jewelry. But I think it can become an obsession, and even has for many of us on YouTube. And what I would say about that is we need to stop it. And I'm making that decision to stop it now before it hits again, because it will come. There's always going to be a new fashion. And what I would say about that is just to be a little more selective, and certainly don't go into any kind of debt at all. Let's pay off our debts and don't go into debt and buy new things. If it costs that much, maybe we don't need it, and we've got plenty with what we already have. I ask you to pray for me about this, and I'll pray for you about this, because I think that the worldly possessions are quite enticing, especially to women. There's an industry out there that I'm not against. There's people that derive their income from retail and websites and the selling of things. There's nothing wrong with that. Let's just use some modesty about it. Let's use some restraint about it, and let's think on it. And again, the ability to pull us in to buy too much or the wrong thing comes weaker and weaker the longer we resist it. So let's use some wisdom and even pray about the things we purchase. What do y'all think? Well, comment below. I hope you've enjoyed this story, and let me know what you think of this, and really all the thoughts of this video. I love you guys so much, and I'll talk to you again soon.